Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig, it's 9 o'clock, it's time for another video, and today I am doing a very requested video. Ever since I started doing the company man style deep dives, there is one company that has come up over and over again that people have wanted me to look into and people have wanted me to do a video on, and that is the Supreme Magic Company, which is a beloved magic company in the UK especially, that were responsible for creating more professional magicians than I think pretty much any magic company in existence. Well, that's what I'm looking at today. Today, we are looking at the rise and fall of Supreme Magic Company. Basically, we're cracking open the story of a British institution, and I mean that, and it once claimed to be the largest magic manufacturer in the world. It's a company that shaped children's magic and stage magic and sort of the magic that you would see in working men's clothes for decades. It published a mountain of literature and then almost overnight vanished from the high street. And when I say vanished from the high street, I mean literally vanished from the high street. And today, in 2025, Supreme Magic Company is still there, but in a very different way. So we're going to examine exactly what happened. This is the rise and the fall of the Supreme Magic Company of Bideford in Devon. Okay, so let's start with Chapter 1, and we'll call Chapter 1 the beginning, and that was around about 1953. You see, Supreme was founded in 1953 by Edwin A. Hooper, better known as Edwin the Magician. He started with a small loan from his father and encouragement from legends like Jack Hughes and Percy Abbott. And Hooper's model was unusual. No flashy storefront, no high street presence. Instead, a factory and a catalogue. And he wanted to build a mail order empire. Now, I'm trying something a little bit different in this video because I'm not just going to be talking about what happened. I'm going to be talking about lessons that went on, lessons that we can learn as we're talking about Supreme. And the first lesson that we can learn is from this time period, right back when Supreme first started in 1953. And the first lesson is, don't copy the competition, redefine the model. You see, other magic shops were literally that, walk-in shops. And Hooper scaled through mail order. He removed distractions, focused on production, and grew faster than traditional dealers. So the business lesson we can learn here is look at your competition. Do a competitor analysis. Look around and see what every other person is doing in your industry and see what you can do to disrupt that industry. Most successful entrepreneurs, most successful business owners that have become successful over years have done so by standing out, by having a USP, by doing something different to what everybody else is doing. And to be clear, that involves taking risks. But, as I've said on this channel many times before, taking risks isn't necessarily a bad thing. Me, personally, for example, I've taken lots of risks through my career. Have all of them played off? No. But you know what? If I'd never taken a single risk, I'd probably still be doing door-to-door sales at this point because I never would have even become a full-time professional magician. So, the first thing that we can say is if you're planning on going into business, do a competitor analysis, disrupt the industry, and redefine. That's really important. Right, Chapter 2, we're going to talk about the rise. We're going to be looking at the 1960s and the 1970s. You see, by the 60s and the 70s, Supreme wasn't just a dealer, they were a global player. I mean, if you weren't around in the 60s and 70s, and to be honest, I wasn't. I was born in 1976. So a lot of this that I'm talking about now has been kind of gathered by speaking to people and doing kind of research into this subject. But they were a global player. Their catalogues were events. Magicians would gather at clubs and pore over the new listings and send in orders. It was huge, absolutely huge. You've got to understand that back in the 60s and 70s, things were very different than they are now in 2025. And you didn't have access to the internet, for example. Their catalogues really were the lifeblood for magicians all over the world. Now, Supreme also published books. They built colourful props for kids' entertainers and became a global exporter. In their own history of their current website, they describe themselves as a global influencer. And to be honest, by many accounts and many of the people I've spoken to, they aren't exaggerating, to be perfectly honest. Now, one of their crown jewels that they set up in the 60s and 70s is called the Magigram. Now, this launched in 1966 and ran through to 1995. That's a long time. It was edited for years by Ken DeCourcy and filled over 22,000 pages with routines, essays and contributions from people like Louis Ganson, Max Maven, Billy McComb, Pavel, David Britland, and more. If you wanted to know what working magicians are doing, you read the Magigram. Now, that's kind of really interesting. That brings us up to lesson number 2, which is content is culture. Supreme didn't just sell tricks. They built a publishing ecosystem that made them the authority, and they did that not just through their catalog, but through Magigram. So what we can learn from that is if you want to be successful in business, you also need to understand that content is king. Now, back when Supreme did this, it was kind of a difficult thing to do, right? Because they didn't have access to the internet. They didn't have access to short form media. But we do these days. Honestly, one of the things that I've done to build my businesses is content-rich marketing. Because the thing with content marketing is it's free. You know, you can publish blogs, you can create videos, you can create short form content, and you can do that without any money. Look at Magic TV right now. You're watching a video on this channel. Why are you watching a video on this channel? Because I put content out every single week for free, and people watch this content. And that content that people watch has led to more people knowing who I am, which has built up a brand for me as a creator, which means that when I release a trick, more people are going to be aware of it than somebody who only appears when a trick has been bought out with their name on it. It's the same in every single industry. How do you become successful as a professional magician? You put a ton of content out. If you want to be a successful wedding magician, you publish on Instagram, you publish on YouTube, you publish on Facebook. You send out so much content that people can't ignore you. That's really important. You want to be absolutely everywhere. Because these days, in 2025, people are looking for validation. If they're looking for a magician, for example, they're going to search for a magician. They're going to find you maybe, and then they're going to compare you to other magicians they found. If you have a dead Instagram page, if you have a dead YouTube account, if you have a blog that never posts on it, and they're comparing you against somebody that's posting on Instagram all the time and looks like the busiest magician on the planet, you're just not going to stack up. You're not going to get the gig. And this is something that Supreme did way back in the 60s. So if they could do it, there's no excuse. Okay, so chapter 3, we're going to look at the factory and the output. At its peak, Supreme's Biddeford site employed around 100 people. Locals called it the most mysterious factory in the world. Inside, workers built pops, sewed cloths, painted bright apparatus, and packed parcels to ship worldwide. The company supplied huge names in the industry at the time, like Tommy Cooper, David Nixon, Paul Daniels, alongside thousands of working pros. Their publishing output was equally staggering. Supreme released books like Louis Ganson's Magic of Slidini, which came out in 1980, Ian Adair's Encyclopedia of Dove Magic, which came out from 1968 to 1987, the shelves of serious magicians sagged under Supreme hardbacks. The partnership between Hooper and Ian Adair was key. Adair joined in the late 1950s and spent 36 years at Supreme, designing, writing, and co-creating thousands of routines. He was remembered as one half of Supreme right until his death, which happened this year in 2025. But you have to understand, this was a huge, scalable business. Think about that for a minute. A factory with about 100 employees literally just creating magic tricks. Like, not even Murphy's match this today. I very much doubt that Murphy's Magic have got 100 employees at their warehouse in Sacramento. I know that Penguin haven't. The scale, and you're looking at like back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't think there were as many magicians back then as there are now, because magic wasn't accessible as it is now, as it was back then. So what's the lesson we can learn from this? Creative partnerships scale output. You see, Hooper built the machine, but Adair kept it fed. That partnership made Supreme more prolific than any solo operation ever could be. You are only as good as the people that you surround yourself with. So here's the thing: if you want to be successful in business, you need to make sure that you have the best people around you. So many magicians that want to go out and do magic, they try to go it alone, but there's so many different ways that you can actually make sure that that isn't the case. For example, I've had business coaches throughout my entire career. Ever since I started being a professional magician, I've had business coaches. I've had about 7 or 8 business coaches at this point, and every single business coach has made me more successful. They've helped me go from where I was to where I am. I've surrounded myself with staff that are incredible at what they do. I've surrounded myself with entertainers that work for me within my company that are incredible at what they do. I've got lots of friends in business that have got nothing to do with magic, so that if I have an issue or I have a question, I can go to people that are way more successful than me. And that's so important. Hooper brought on Adair, and Adair arguably was the person that made Supreme what we remember it today. Have you got your own Adair? Have you got your own Ian Adair within your infrastructure? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a business coach. It doesn't necessarily have to be an employee. It could be your partner. My partner, Sarah, is incredible. I couldn't do what I do if it wasn't for her. She's way more knowledgeable about 90% of the business than I ever will be. You can't do everything on your own because you'll just end up being a busy fool. You have to surround yourself with people that will make you more successful. And that's a lesson that we can learn from looking back at Supreme and everything that they were doing 30, 40, 50 years ago. Okay, chapter 4, what made Supreme unique? So what made Supreme Supreme? Well, having spoken to people and having done some really kind of big research, there's 3 things that stand out. The first was the mail order. And specifically the scale that they actually did the mail order with. Catalogs drove the buzz and the sales. You've got to understand that marketing and sales are the lifeblood of any business. I was speaking to a business owner just the other day, and they had multiple staff, and they themselves as the directors focused on the day-to-day operations of the business. They focused on what was happening on a day-to-day basis. Nobody was taking ownership for sales or marketing. Their business would just market itself, but would never be where they wanted it to be because they didn't have a clearly defined role for somebody who was doing marketing. And that's really important. It's really important that you understand that without marketing, there's no sales. Without sales, there's no gigs. Without gigs, there's no money. Without money, you don't have a business. You basically have a hobby. So, you need to understand the marketing and the sales process. Now, the second thing that made Supreme unique were the children's and sort of stage magic. They really made a name for themselves, producing bright, durable, practical props that entertainers relied on. Veterans say the standard of kid shows dipped after Supreme closed. Now, that's really important. How many times have you seen a review for a product within the magic industry where somebody will say, "Oh, it's a good idea," but the thing that lets it down is the quality of the product. I remember something that came out recently by Julio Monturo. Fantastic idea, but it was just let down by the fact that it just fell apart after 0.2 seconds. You need to make sure that anything that you bring out, if you're a creator in magic, you need to make sure that it's props that people can rely on, because you will build a business and a reputation based on that. But it's the same if you're a professional magician. You need to make sure that you're going out and doing the best job that you possibly can do. You will get a reputation for yourself if you're delivering exceptional quality. And the third thing that kind of made Supreme special was publishing gravity. Between the Magic-Ram and their endless books, Supreme dominated the conversation in magic. And that's the key. You want to dominate the conversation in magic. You want to dominate the conversation constantly. So back in the day, everyone would talk about Supreme. Everybody would compare tricks in the catalogue they were going to buy. Everyone would talk about the tricks that they use in their show, which was normally a Supreme trick. Everything, every question, every decision, every conversation in every magic club around the world was all about Supreme. That's the best type of marketing you can get. That's better than word of mouth. That's phenomenal. It's kind of a little bit like Google, right? You know that something like Google is successful when it becomes the thing that you do. I'm Googling it. right? I'm Googling it. I'm going to Google this. I'm not going to search it. I'm going to Google it. So my question to you is, how can you do the same thing? How can you make it so that everybody's talking about you? If you're a wedding magician, how can you make it so that when people aren't even looking at you or your content, people are talking about you? How do you get brides and grooms talking about you outside of you being in business? It's the same with me. You know, how many times have you had a conversation with somebody about something that's been on Magic TV? Yeah, that's by design. With the content I put out and by the stuff that I say and by the content that I do, that is absolutely by design. I want people to have conversations about me offline, because then, you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's very easy to forget you. You know, it's very easy to be forgotten in this industry, in the entertainment industry, it's in any industry. And the way you stop that is by being the person that everyone's talking about within your niche. So the lesson to learn here is specialize in what the market undervalues. While others chased flashy stage illusions, Supreme owned the bread and butter market. That was their moat. You know, they had the stuff that everybody wanted. And if you are the producer that has the product or the service that everybody wants, you're always going to be super successful. Chapter 5 is the turning point. Now, this kind of happened around about 1987 to 1992. In 1987, Edwin Hooper sold Supreme, mainly due to ill health. He stepped back to an honorary role and later started Edwin's Magic Arts on a small scale. He passed away in 1992. Now, the sale was the start of change. Without Hooper's vision, management culture shifted. The company carried on, but something was missing. And this is something that we see over and over again when we examine these magic companies from years gone by. We saw it with L&L Publishing a few weeks ago, and we're seeing it again here now with Supreme. So the lesson we can learn here is founder DNA matters. If a business is built around one visionary, selling without a succession plan is dangerous. Remove the founder and you risk removing the compass. So what you need to, like, okay, say for example, I sold Magic TV tomorrow. And somebody else bought it, and then all of a sudden you saw somebody else doing a 555. You saw somebody else doing a review show special. I wasn't there, Ryland wasn't there, Sarah wasn't there, Michael wasn't there, Matt wasn't there, Tom wasn't there, Thea wasn't there. It would be weird. People would stop watching it because you bought into Magic TV because of buying into the individual people that are a part of Magic TV, right? So it matters. If you sell a business and none of that's there anymore, it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect how the business runs. So, you know, I've seen people buy businesses and really be unsuccessful with them. And sometimes it's better to build your own business from scratch and build it around you and who you are and your values. It's a very important lesson to understand. But that was the turning point. But we now need to talk about the decline. Okay, chapter 6, the decline. This happened between 1993 and 1995. Now, accounts vary a little bit here, and you look at the traditional, the official website of the Magic Supreme Limited. We'll get to that in a little bit. And I've spoken to various other people. I've looked on the internet, and it's a little bit sketchy as to what really happened. But here's what the record actually factually shows. Supreme ceased trading by 1993-1994. The Magigram continued publishing until February 1995, then stopped. Locals recall the Bideford site disappearing from the high street around about 1995 as well. Insiders like Ian Adair pointed to post-sale management and the cause of the decline. Now, outside pressures didn't help. Rising UK manufacturing costs, the VHS revolution, you know, we know all about that. We've spoken about this before. It changed how Magic was taught. New competitors like International Magic and later Penguin Magic were reshaping the landscape. And there was a shift from those bright, colourful kids props to kind of more cool close-up magic that you could carry around in your pocket and, you know, really cool hip trailers and visuals and so on and so forth. You know, L&L Publishing were leading the way around about this time with their flashy DVDs and their flashy, you know, everything was changing away from what Supreme built. And without the founder being there really to steady the ship, it caused problems. So the lesson we can learn here is legacy companies can die from the inside. Supreme wasn't crushed by rivals. It collapsed because leadership, after the founder, couldn't adapt to the change. There was a lot of stuff going on, and literally they couldn't adapt, and that's realistically what caused the end and the decline of Supreme Magic. Okay, chapter 7 is the aftermath and the legacy. Now, in 1996, Paul Anthony acquired the Supreme and the Magic Supreme assets. His company still holds the rights, maintains prototypes, and preserves the magazines and the books. In effect, the archive lives on under Magic Supreme Limited. And you can go and actually check that website out if you want to. You can go and check out Magic Supreme Limited, and you can see exactly what they're doing. You can actually go there and you can buy Supreme Magic props. They have stock. They have props in stock and ready to ship. They also have on that website a place where you can sign up, and you can sign up so as they release sort of tricks in the future from their archives, you'll be the first and you'll be notified about that. They make it very clear they're not bringing out new props, and so supply is very, very limited, and you can't just go there and say, hey, can I get this Supreme trick from 1972, for example? But they are still having they still have Supreme tricks available, and Supreme tricks available for sale. And also on that website, there's kind of a really interesting discussion about the history of Supreme and a whole bunch of other stuff. So the thing that you need to understand from this is protect the archive. Even if the company dies, its intellectual property and history must be safeguarded. That's how legacy survives. And here's the thing. I really suggest, if you guys have any interest in Supreme Magic, and if you've enjoyed this video, I would suggest that you go over to the website, go over to Magic Supreme Limited, and have a look around there. And, there might be a trick on there that you like. I mean, there's some very, very old school, bright, colourful props that, honestly, 20 or 30 years ago, were the lifeblood for every kids' entertainer in the UK, if not globally. Okay, final chapter, chapter 8. What can we learn? So what lessons do we take from Supreme's story? Well, very, very briefly, because we've already really covered this. Number 1, redefine the model. Don't just copy the competition, but create something new. Make something that is completely unique and different. Do a competitor analysis if you need to. Number 2, content is culture. Publishing builds authority. It's easier in 2025 to do content-driven marketing than ever before. Look at how successful it was Supreme in the 60s and 70s. If you want to be successful, you have to make sure that you're using a content-rich marketing strategy. Number 3, partnership scale creative output. Surround yourself by people that are absolutely amazing. Have somebody in your corner that can help you, because nobody's perfect at everything. And so what you have to do is you have to find people that will help you do the things that you're not very good at. The reason myself and Sarah work so well together is because Sarah hates doing marketing, she hates doing sales, and she hates performing, which are the 3 things that I love doing. But I couldn't do the accounts and the admin and the bookkeeping and all of the HR-driven stuff that she does. We make a good team. Of course, we both bring something different to the table. Sometimes having more really, really helps. Number 4, specialize where others don't. Really try to stand out in your niche. Really try to create products or create services that are unique to everyone else out there. Supreme did that with all of their props and their colorful props, and really standing out with their kids' props and their stage props. I did that. The reason I set up an illusion show way back in the day is because there were very few illusion shows in the UK at the time, and I felt that having an illusion show would help me stand out. You have to specialize, you have to niche down. Next, number 5, founder DNA is critical. If you are ever going to sell your business, or you're ever going to buy into a business, you need to understand that a lot of the time, if a business is successful, it's because the person that's driving that business from the ground up. Next, companies die from within, not just from outside pressure. That's very, very important. So you need to make sure that your infrastructure within the company is absolutely 100% perfect. And then finally, protect the archives, because magic outlives the company. All very important lessons we can learn from. So there you go. That is the rise and fall of Supreme Magic. Now, before I close, let me just say this. If you perform family or children's shows in the UK, or if you've ever read a Ganson book or a Magicam article or an Ian Adair routine, you are working in Supreme Shadow. The Supreme Magic Company didn't just sell tricks, they trained a generation. And when Ian Adair passed away in 2025, people weren't saying rest in peace. People were saying thank you for my career, because so many people owe their career to the Supreme Magic Company and what Edwin and Ian did and how they built it up to the level it is now. So even though the doors shut in the 90s, the ideas are still alive, and it shows across the country today. And it also shows in the fact that since I've been doing these deep dives, this has been the most requested video out of every single video that people have asked for. This has been the most requested one. So I hope you've enjoyed it. There it is. It is the rise and fall of Supreme Magic. Now, here's what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this. The deep dives are becoming very, very popular, and I want to thank every single person that watches them. Also, if you've got a company or a subject that you want me to do a deep dive on, again, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget, you want to see more videos like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back again very, very soon with another video. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Oh, and one more thing. Don't forget to join the Netrix, www.thenetrix.com. It's my online streaming platform with lots of business advice as well as lots and lots of magic. You want to learn everything I know? Go to the Netrix. I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching for the rise and fall of Supreme Magic. I'll see you again. My name's Craig, and this is Magic TV.